2002 on file with the Department of Planning and Building Services. And then a new use permit condition number 7 that states no second units shall be permitted on land subject to this use permit without modification of this entitlement.
Okay. Ms. Urquhart, does that make sense to you? You can. Yeah, if you can come up to
please step forward.
Sorry, I believe it probably leaves me in the same position if I understood right. It means that if I ever needed to build a second residential unit on there, except for the replacement one that we agreed to, that I would have to come back through and make this same argument?
What, and Mr. Lynch can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times what we've done is we've put restrictions on the deeds that prohibit it. And what I don't want to do is do that to you.
Right, I understand that.
So by creating this new language, it gives you the opportunity to come back and just modify the permit, the use permit process, go through that use permit process, apply for a second unit, and if there's anything, whatever as I see it, the appropriate impacts that may or may occur and whatever's reasonably attributable to that, that's what that process stands on its own. It doesn't, this process doesn't get convoluted with it.
See, I made the assumption that since the Planning Commission had approved this subdivision, this wasn't going to undo the subdivision. That was never my intent. My intention was only to see if I could get a second residential unit approved on the larger remainder parcel. I think it leaves me probably in a very similar position. I didn't think it was going to be on the deed, the way it sat. I thought it was.
Well, it would have shown up on a title report, so it clearly it would stand out more on a title report. I agree with you. Fundamentally, it doesn't change anything, but what it does do is I think it clarifies and to a degree simplifies the process by which you would change that restriction.
Well, do you think, given the Planning Commission and your department's feeling about that the whole road would have to be widened to 20 feet in order to allow that?
I think the road will have to be improved. The standard which would have to be approved would have to be proportional to whatever a second unit generates. Whatever AASHTO says is 8 traffic trips per day, it would need to be proportional to that impact.
Whatever that means. I think I understand it as well as it can be understood. Okay. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Okay.
So with that, Mr. Chairman.
I do have one comment.
Yeah. If we just eliminated condition 18.
I'm sorry?
If we just eliminated condition 18.
The only reason I suggested go ahead.
If we eliminate condition 18, then she has, with the elimination of that condition, on a 100-acre parcel, she has the right to build a second unit.
The only reason I'm suggesting you put some language in there is that it does provide notice through the recorded map that there are use permit conditions that govern future development. Case in point, we had another case in Vista del Lago where it was approved, there was a division approved, there was a limitation on the ability to have second units. The property was sold, the title company didn't catch it, the realtor didn't catch it, they didn't disclose it to the new owner, the property was sold, a new owner came in to get a building permit for us for a second unit, we said no, and he had to go back and sue his realtor and sue the title company, and there's a big mess. The only thing I'm trying to do is provide constructive notice.
But it'll allow her to put a second unit on.
Through a modification of the use permit.
Yeah.
That sounds like maybe the best way to go.
Okay. Back to Supervisor Delaware.
So my motion would be to incorporate those changes. The technical question is, are we upholding or denying the appeal? That was my thought, too.
You could look at it either way, I think. I think you're...
Counsel?
To counsel. You've been awful quiet this afternoon.
I would really take that as a denial of the appeal because there's not going to be any present change in Ms. Urquhart's circumstances. What this does do is it provides, I guess from what Mr. Lynch suggested, is a streamlined opportunity in the future, with upgrades or what have you, to do that. So I would suggest it to be a denial of the appeal, but with the additional language becoming part of the subdivision that Mr. Lynch is proposing.
Right. So that's my motion.
Okay, so the motion to deny the appeal with the amendments has been presented. Do I hear a second on the motion?
Well, so with a change of the use permit, she'll be conditionally able to build a second unit if she so desires.
Potentially.
Yes. Yeah. I'll second the motion.
Okay, there is a second. So there is a motion and a second. Discussion of the motion. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question to planning. Does this not also open up the potential for a second unit on the 20-acre parcel?
It could be on either one of them would have to modify the use permit.
So the language, I think as you stated it, would apply to both parcels?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. So the motion to deny with amendments passes unanimously 5-0. Okay? All right. Thank you. Okay. We have 3 minutes before our last timed item at 2:30.
Public expression?
Yeah. Well, how many are we going to have? Let's take public expression. Mr. Johnson. Please state your name for the record and keep it to 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Richard Johnson, speaking today for the Voters Union. It's without question the most important decision made by this Board of Supervisors in the last few years is the selection of preferred alternatives to the Ukiah Valley Area Plan Environmental Impact Report last August 21st. In that single decision, the Board of Supervisors did two things. They increased the parameters of possible expansion in Ukiah Valley, and they signaled to developers all over the world that Mendocino County is wide open for business. In the three areas where there was a 3-2 vote and not a consensus, Supervisor James Wattenberger provided the swing vote. That included Masonite, Lover's Lane, and North Ukiah. Supervisor Wattenberg denied that this was a signal that he favored those developments, but said instead he wanted to study the worst case scenario. There's always a worst case scenario. Choosing to prefer it makes it possible. Allowing it to happen makes it inevitable. When Supervisor Wattenberger approved the selection of maximum build-out levels in key Ukiah Valley Area Plan study areas, he violated his own campaign promise to protect the rural character of Ukiah Valley. Immediately, the Smart Growth Coalition gathered petitions asking him to reverse his position. He was invited to come to public meetings, sponsor his own meeting, and come to a radio interview, and he declined all those invitations. On behalf of the Green Party, I challenged Supervisor Wattenberger to come to the December scoping session, and he did not come. Supervisor Wattenberger's decision not to seek a second term is not a personal decision, it's a political decision. To continue defying his constituents, to continue to avoid accountability for his decisions, to continue demurring and dissimulating instead of declaring his pro-growth motives and intentions. Now that Supervisor Wattenberger has announced his retirement from this board 9 months from now, the decision of last August should be reconsidered. I call upon the board to schedule a reconsideration of the selection of study alternatives in the Ukiah Valley EIR in the light of Supervisor Wattenberger's decision not to run for re-election. We are facing global warming and peak oil, and we need to make a different decision. Thank you.